To everybody here today, thank you for being here. This is a big month for us, which we'll talk a little more about in a minute, but we're going to celebrate some lessons that we've learned from 30 years of marketing. 30
Yeah.
years since we've been trying to help people do what that tagline says: stand out, stay top of mind, and sell more. And I got Vicky into this when she was 8, so it works really well.
Oh yeah, everyone believes that. Don't count the
But
wrinkles.
this is our 30th birthday month. I can't believe that it was August 1996 that we started promoting Haley Marketing Group to the staffing industry. Um, there may be some people on today's webinar who remember getting green envelopes in the mail, and every envelope had a letter in it, and it had an article about how to market your staffing company. And that has just been going on and on and on. And now, what we're doing here, webinars, that started in 2009, and we've been doing webinars almost every single month now for 17 years. But in all that time, some things have never changed. We've never stopped on our original mission to help level the playing field for the small to mid-size staffing and recruiting company. We've never stopped trying to find ways to deliver world-class marketing and make it faster, easier, and more affordable. And we've never stopped learning because I love this meme. It has definitely not been a straight line of just learning things and getting better. And so Vicky and I today are going to do our best to share some of the things the two of us had learned. It was actually really fun for us to get together and put our heads together and think about what have we actually learned over 30 years. And I mostly looked at Vicky and said, "Give me your list because you remember things way better than I do."
Sadly, I don't. So we'll see. We'll see what we came up with.
But before we get into the lessons, got something big to share. So we wrote a book. So Vicky, you want to give us a little overview of the book?
Oh, I guess so.
I'll throw
You
you
sort
on
of
the
put me
spot.
on. Yeah, totally. So this is coming out September 2nd. So mark your calendar. We'll be on a flight to Croatia going on vacation, but you should get our book. It's called Building a Sales Growth Engine, and it is 30 years of lessons, the ones that are all teachable in one place. So we'll cover some of them here, but there's more fun stuff there and a lot of system information, but stories as well. But it all started with math. Um, Used to take 33 calls to reach one person, and then 10 connects per appointment, 3 appointments per job order. That is 990 calls per job order. Obviously, that's not going to work. Making more calls is dead. This book is what replaces it. And we didn't really write it to sell a book. We wrote it over 30 years. We've been giving away this information in our webinar series since 2009, but we started, 1996, giving away information that was really the background of our company. And so we wrote it because over those 30 years, the stuff works and it turns out to be a system. And so we wrote a system for you to use and designed a process, which is near and dear to my heart. I love a good process.
Yeah, so we're really excited. It will be on Amazon on the 2nd of September, as Vicky mentioned. We hope you'll be able to get a copy. We hope you'll like it. We hope you'll give us lots of feedback, and tell us if you find that the lessons are helpful for your business. All right, speaking of lessons, it's time to change
Yeah,
gears.
be careful here. Like, wait till you see this PowerPoint slide.
This is the worst PowerPoint we've ever designed. And I've said that before, but this one's actually worse.
So this one's
So,
worse.
what I mentioned, like we put our heads together and just tried to make a list of things we've learned over the years. Now, I would love to say that the two of us are brilliant, but really what we're really good is paying attention to really smart people. And we call it the CASE method, which is an acronym. This is not the MBA school CASE method. This is an acronym that stands for copy and steal everything. So what we like to do is learn from really smart people and try to apply their ideas. And when things work or when they don't work, take it as a lesson that we can use. And then when we put together the whole list, Vicki said to me, "What the heck are we going to do with this? It's just a jumbled mess." So, what we attempted to do is organize it into a series of categories. So I think we have 6 or 7 categories. And here come the awful slides. So, the very first one is on lessons in starting a business. Now, I'm going to click the down arrow and you're going to see the first page of lessons. We are not going to read all of these.
No, thank you.
You can go to lunchwithhaley.com if you have not already downloaded the slides, and you'll get all the lessons there. What we decided to do is rather than read you a gazillion bullet points, yeah, this is what it looks like. What we are going to do is share some stories.
You're welcome to screenshot.
If you don't want to download the PDF, yeah. So we're going to share some stories of things that stand out on the list. So for me, I'm going to take the very first bullet about building a better mousetrap with nurture marketing, and I'm going to share a story. It's actually the opening story in the book. So it was back in actually 1990, beginning of 1993, early 1993. I don't remember, or maybe middle. Anyway, happened to hear a guy named Jim Cecil. Jim Cecil was a well-known marketer at that time, and he taught a concept he refers to as nurture marketing. So Vicky shared the numbers just a minute ago, and my dad was a numbers guy. 990 calls, like that wouldn't have phased him. It's like, just make more calls. I'm like, it might work for you, but it doesn't work for everybody else. And ironically, he never would have made a cold call, but he was good at asking people to do it. So when Jim talked about nurture marketing, it's sort of the antidote to make more calls. And what Jim said is he said, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think about yourself trekking through the deepest, darkest jungles in South America and you're doing your best Indiana Jones impersonation. And think about walking through the brush. And as you're using your machete and you're hacking away the foliage, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you get smacked right in the chest with a spear. Now, at that moment in time, what goes through your mind? And now Jim liked to joke, well, if you're in purchasing, what goes through your mind is I need to put together an RFP and reach out to at least a dozen spear removal surgeons and see who can meet our qualifications to get this out of me for the least possible cost in a very reasonable amount of time. But of course, that's not what happens when you get hit with a spear. What you're thinking about is who can get this out of my body without killing me? And Jim's story is a simple metaphor for the problems your clients are catching every day. Somebody didn't show up from work. We have an unexpected leave of absence. We have a need for more people. It's our peak season. We have problems with turnover. Your clients are getting hit with all kinds of different spears. Your job is to be that trusted spear removal surgeon. So instead of having to answer to the RFP or have a lower markup than the person who's currently filling their orders, you're the one they are going to trust. And Jim taught this process of how you nurture relationships. So it was really a better way to approach staffing sales. We didn't start Haley Marketing day one with this model. We actually put it into mom and dad's business. And over the course of a few years, we doubled their company until they sold it later in the 1990s. And in the middle of that process, 1996, Haley Marketing was born. So that's the first of my lessons was the Jim Cecil cassette tape. How about you, Vicky?
I think it takes from there and the importance of focus. So we didn't try to be all things to everybody. We honed right in the staffing business and not all staffing businesses, the small to medium-sized businesses. We really focused on leveling the playing field for those smaller staffing firms to be able to compete with the big guys. And we were told, I don't know how many times, and David, I don't know if you remember, but over and over and over again, that that's too narrow of a niche. You're not going to be able to sell enough. There's not
You're
enough
nuts. They don't
price.
do marketing.
Crazy. They don't do market. They don't have the money to do marketing. Like whatever.
Yeah.
30
Oh yeah,
years.
no marketing company ever makes money working with small businesses. I
Yeah.
remember it was told that one so many times.
I hear that I've heard that recently. Like somebody said that to me recently. I said, well, that's not my experience. So anyway, 30 years later, we can talk staffing. Our team can talk staffing. And often we know so much about staffing that we can share information and ideas beyond marketing with our clients. And that builds a trust and a level of ability to consult and solve problems that we wouldn't have if we had spread ourselves so thin. So that's my big one. I think it didn't cost us the market, it focused us on a market. And then I guess my other one, I don't know if you want me to go with again, I'll go again.
Go ahead.
Very much like being pregnant, you don't remember the pain. So we have three kids. I don't know if you know that, but we have three kids. If you remember the pain in the first one, you probably, all the moms out there are going, yeah, I understand. You probably wouldn't have had a second one, and humanity would cease to exist. It's like that with small business. If we recalled how hard it was, we probably wouldn't have gone again. And I can tell you, we built Haley Mail. David, what year was that? I
That
don't
was
know.
1999.
1999, we built Haley Mail. We wanted to do email marketing because a client asked us, well, a client said, hey, this is great. Can we do it via email? This cool thing that's coming out, email? And there was no MailChimp, and there was no Constant Contact, and there was no HubSpot or High Level. So we had to build it ourselves. And David came to me and with this, I promised the client we're going to do email. And I'm just
Yeah,
like,
how are we going to do that?
great. That's awesome. I can't wait to see how we're going to do that. And he looked at me like, no, you're going to do that. So we solved that problem and it was painful. It took a long time. It took multiple developers. It took lots and lots of writing spec and learning different things. And here we are 30 years later doing the same exact thing with Rogue Active Intelligence. You'll hear a little bit more about that, but if we had remembered that pain, we probably wouldn't have done it. And if we were really thinking about, it was embarrassing, the first version that we got out the door. I don't know if Rogue IQ is the same, but there have been moments where it's embarrassing. You can't wait. We should have to ship and learn and deal with that pain and go through that pain and do those hard things. So I think that was the big takeaway for me.
Yeah, that's going. You actually made me look at the list again and think about there's one bullet that just keeps jumping out at me, and it's the shortest one on the list. Persistence wins.
Yeah.
So, if anybody's ever read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, he often talks about the power of persistence. And the, there's another guy named, I don't even know his name is Reid Hoffman. He was the original founder of LinkedIn. And he said, Vicky, what you just said, like if you release your product and the first version isn't something you're embarrassed by, you actually waited too long to release it. But you have to have the persistence to stick with it. You have to have the persistence to keep making things better. You have to have the persistence to take on things that you don't know what you're doing, but you're going to learn. When we did recruitment marketing and we got started there in 2018, Matt Lozar was on our team then, and the two of us were talking about like, we don't know what we're doing. How are we going to get into this? And what happens? And how do we get up to speed? And yeah, the first few months were really hard as we were figuring things out. And the next few months got a little bit easier. And then over time, it's like we got really good at it. And having that courage to take on hard things and having the willingness to be persistent and get through the hard times will make you successful. So now, if you're listening and you're running a staffing business and you're saying, hey, my landscape is changing. AI is completely redefining the value proposition for recruiting and how we operate. New competitors are popping up in online staffing and platforms and nearshore and offshore, and people who aren't playing by the same rules. I've got all of these things that are uphill battles. I'm going to need to think about what I'm going to do differently. I'm going to have to try some hard things. I may have to get into some new service lines. I don't know what we're doing,
And that's okay.
but, and that's okay. Because if you're willing to be persistent, if you're willing to figure it out, if you're willing to constantly learn, you'll get good.
Yeah.
So those are a few stories about starting a business. There's lots of other lessons in there. If you see something that you have a question about, feel free to chime in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to those as we go. But now let's jump forward to one that should be really easy for us. Lessons on sales and marketing. And it's kind of funny because I think this list is actually shorter than the last screen, which means we didn't probe that hard on it because we have so many lessons. We have a whole book we just launched with lessons on sales and marketing. But I'd like to start on this one because I've heard many clients who are very resistant to doing the one thing that is the biggest reason we're talking here today, the biggest reason we've persisted over 30 years. And that's the willingness to give away your best ideas. I mentioned those green envelopes. For multiple years, every single month, like clockwork, we sent out really good marketing ideas, showing people how to do it themselves. Then we launched our first newsletter in the early 2000s, first email newsletter, the Idea Club. And that has evolved over the years to now we have smart ideas where I can't believe I committed to this, but we're doing this every Saturday morning, sharing the best ideas we can. And when I've talked to particularly recruiters about this, there's a reluctance to want to share the secret sauce of how they recruit. But I will tell you from our firsthand experience, when you tell people what you do, how to do it, including the secrets of your success, including some of your secret sauce, sometimes all of your secret sauce, what you do is not teach them to compete with you, not teach them to do it on their own. Yes, there's a small fraction who will, but you build tremendous credibility with your audience. And mostly what you're showing them is, boy, what you do is harder than I thought. I don't really want to do all those steps. So I'll just hire you because what people will do is they'll always follow the path of least resistance, which is not a sales and marketing lesson on here, but it actually is if you can make using your services the path of least resistance, you are going to win. So that's one
We
for
were,
me. Vicky, you got one here? Because I got a
we
bunch
were,
of them on this slide.
we were just talking about that yesterday. That path of least resistance is the way. If you can take work off of somebody and help them solve their problems and meet their goals by taking the work off them, that's a customer for life. So that's a good one, David. Um, I've got a couple here. The biggest one for me, a lesson on sales and marketing is don't sell. And all the salespeople are going, what is she talking about? But I'm really against sales, and I never have sold anything in my life, even though I've had several sales jobs, even before Haley Marketing Group. I worked for Xerox in sales. I consult. It's the intent to help someone solve a problem, and you never ever have to sell. You're just curious, asking questions, trying to find out what the problems are, what the root cause of that problem is, and then finding a way for whatever you have to offer can solve that problem. That's consulting. So I don't think in 30 years we've ever sold. We teach our team to do the same thing. We had consulting class this morning talking about exactly this. You just have to be curious and care, and the sales will happen because you're helping somebody to solve their problems. And we really need to be thinking about, we're not trying to sell and do something to somebody. We're trying to do something for somebody. And it's really that intent. So it's about asking questions, being curious. I can see you want to say something. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, there's two C's. You said it, curiosity and caring.
Yeah.
If curiosity, caring, and the willingness to listen. And one of the things that we said this morning in consulting class is you also don't have to have all the answers. Like I could be the most junior salesperson, but if I'm curious and caring, I'll ask lots of questions. I'll take great notes. Even better, I'll bring my AI companion along to take great notes. And then I'll tell the client or the prospect, hey, I don't know the answer, but I am going to go get the right people in the room and get the answer for you. And those right people could be people in your organization. Maybe it's resources outside your organization, and your value is being a connector. But there's so much you can do just by that curiosity and caring. And what that does is it makes people want to work with you. And as AI commoditizes service delivery, because it can just do things automatically, that curiosity and caring, AI is not going to do that.
Yeah.
I've got one that's almost the other end of the spectrum from the selling with curiosity and caring, but this is a marketing one about being bold. So often we see companies that do one, two things. Hey, give us some really innovative marketing that works. Just show us how it worked for somebody else first. Well, which do you want? The one that's proven with somebody else or really innovative? Um, the innovative one takes more risk. I remember hearing a marketing consultant many years ago saying, if you pitch an idea and you don't see at least half of the people nervously squirming in their chairs, your idea wasn't strong enough. You want ideas that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable because in an era where we're bombarded with marketing messages and other interruptions all day long, the first battle we have to win as marketers, as salespeople, as recruiters, is the battle for somebody's attention. And you have to be bold to break through. I remember, think you remember that Berks and Beyond website? Was it
I do. I do.
2006, 2007? It's a client note, they got acquired, so you can't go check out their website unless you look at the Wayback Machine. But they came to us and said, hey, we want an award-winning website. Okay, challenge taken. And we want a website that looks like nobody else. Okay, we've heard that before. And here's some samples of the pictures we want on our website. And we went, you're
What?
kidding. The
There's a guy in
first
a bathtub.
First picture we opened was a guy in a bathtub, and he was not an attractive person taking a bubble bath and scrubbing his feet. And we're like, how do you work this into a website? But this crazy picture fit the personality of this organization, and they were always willing to be bold and be different. And they did things to not look like every other staffing company in York, Pennsylvania, where they competed. And they were very, very successful. So successful, they got bought by one of the largest privately owned staffing companies in the United States. Um, it worked out really well for everybody, but they were willing to take the risk. I think you
Yeah.
had another favorite
Well,
risk-taking story.
there's another one. It was a key resource group, and it was an idea that was pitched to them, and I don't like the word squirm. It's right up there with moist for me, but they were
Sorry.
uncomfortable. I don't know why, but I really don't like that term. But anyway, we pitched, and I don't remember who pitched it. I don't have all the details. I don't keep all those details in my brain. But the pitch was how you need staffing because hiring is a pain in the ass. And it had a little donkey that was being sent out. And there were people in the room that were like, we can't do this. And I actually think they got a little bit of backlash from some of their very conservative clients about, well, you said the word, you said a swear word. Oh my gosh. So I don't know. They were willing to be bold. It actually really worked well because it was bold, because it was a little controversial. I think it's less controversial now, but back in the early 2000s, that was controversial to swear in a marketing campaign.
Yeah, they also found a lot more donkeys prominently displayed on HR manager desks than complaints that they had because it was a cute little
Yep.
donkey and it was wearing a KRG t-shirt and it worked really well because they were willing to be bold to send this donkey out in a box that 100% of the people who received it opened it. A couple of other sales marketing lessons before we move on. One is sort of an obvious one. People like a deal. Now, does a deal mean you should give them a discount? No. So one of the things that we learned, and we learned this in 2009, right in the heart of the Great Recession. So this was an awful time to be in the staffing industry. It was an awful time to be a supplier in staffing, and the industry was down 30%. And we're like, what are we going to do? Because we know when things get tough in the staffing industry, much as we can stand on our soapbox and say the last thing you want to cut is marketing, unfortunately, very often the first thing that gets cut is marketing. So we were seeing clients wanting to cut marketing. And so what we said is, hey, we know in marketing, when you take one plus one, very often you get three, four, or five. But it's a time when it's really hurting for people to buy one plus one. So let's create a bundle, a deal. If you buy one plus one, we're going to give you a great value. So you're getting reduced pricing, but to our company, we're actually increasing the total value of the relationship for us. So it's a win-win. Win for our client because they're getting a great deal, win for us because we're getting a deeper relationship, and a win because it's much more likely to be successful when we're putting things together. And the first month we launched that bundle, we actually had our highest month of sales in our company's history, even in the middle of the Great Recession. So you can look at a tough economic time and say, hey, are there ways I could put incentives together for clients that it's a win for the client? They're going to want to work with us financially, but it's a win for us because we deepen the relationship and we get more out of it.
Sounds a lot like the rule of threes.
It
'Cause
is the rule of threes. Maybe you want to explain that's one of our core values, and I know it's one of your favorites.
it is my favorite core value, and most people think my share with the service is my favorite because I love service, but it's really rule of threes because I think it's a decision-making tool, and the rule of threes are uh, really attributed to an old manager that I had a long time ago, Stan, and he taught me that you really need to be thinking about, is it good for the client? Is it good for the team member and or members that have to deliver that service? And is it good for the company, for Haley Marketing Group? And we use that filter for all of our decisions. And we've taught our team to use it for all of our decisions. They're three equal pieces, and it has to be good for everybody, or we don't do it. And it's a hard no, we don't do it. So sometimes that's the client asking for a huge discount and we have to say no. Sometimes it's, a lot of extra work that needs to happen. And it's under a time bound and we're going to have a team member that works over the weekend or something. And we might say no to that. But often it allows us to say yes. And it's a good talking point with a client to explain, it has to be win-win-win. We won't compromise on that.
Kind of related to that, I think there's another bullet on this slide that's I personally find the absolute hardest to do, and I think it's one of the ones you understand the value of better than I do.
Are you talking about firing clients?
I am.
Yeah, I am. For anybody that knows me or has worked with me, I am definitely the service person, along with Susan. You all probably know Susan as well. But we bleed service. We just live that. We love it's who we are. It's core to who we are. But if we have a client that's not a good fit, it is okay to say to a client, "You're not a good fit, and we can't continue to do business with us with you." And we'll stand our ground. Um, we have done that. We've done it not a lot of times, but if someone is treating our team poorly or someone is so difficult and they're just not going to ever be happy by what we're providing and we can't provide a service that's going to work for them, or if someone is asking us for something that we just can't do well, I'd rather refer somebody else and say no to them than try to provide that service and fail. Ironically, we fired a client once a long, long time ago because the client was very difficult to work with. We weren't not going to make this person happy or this client happy. And we just kept failing over and over again. And we finally had that hard conversation. It's just not going to work. We want to part ways. We want it to be a good relationship and we wish you well. Several years later, there were changes in the business, there were changes that happened, and there was an opportunity to work with that client again. And the door was open for us to have that conversation. Hey, let's see what we can do to work together this time. And honestly, I think they've turned into our best client because that loyalty and that mutual respect.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, one more from me, and then we'll move on. Is be friends with your competitors. So, uh, in staffing, we go to a lot of trade shows. We see the same people on the circuit at all the shows. Sometimes people are very warm and inviting. We have a great time together. Sometimes people are kind of standoffish. We rarely talk. But I will tell you, there have been competitors over the years. A company named Staffing Robot, Mamu Media, recruiters' websites. You may know that name. That we became friends with as we saw them, and we got to know one another. And in the case of Mamu Media and recruiters' websites, they ended up becoming part of Haley Marketing. In the case of Staffing Robot, they left the staffing industry, but before they did, they said, "Hey, we want to take a lot of our clients and hand them over to you because we know they'll be well taken care of." And so that friendly competitor is really powerful because especially in staffing or recruiting, there's times you can't fill every order. There's times that somebody needs something that you're not that good at, and having someone you can go to, even if they're a competitor, can actually be beneficial to both companies. And then at some point, yeah, you might want to either sell your business or you might want to buy a business, and there's nobody better to do that with than somebody you already know well. You understand their business, you know what they do, you know how they operate, and you know whether or not they'd be a good fit for you or you'd be a good fit for them.
I think we've definitely referred business to competitors. And often
Absolutely.
I think competitors are really good for a company. They help us raise up our expectations, our services, and they push us to be better. Without competitors in the market, we might get lax. So I think competition is a really good thing.
All right, let's move on to some tips for managing. So this one's probably more relevant for a lot of people listening to the webinar who are in the staffing and recruiting industry and spend their days talking to employers. But if you run a business for 30 years and you're directly hiring, managing, growing teams, you learn a lot. So for me, and I'm not saying this just to suck up, but it's true. Our biggest growth multiplier was when Vicky took on operations. So, for those of you who are familiar with EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, there's two seats that exist in the leadership of a company. One is called the visionary, the other is called the integrator. So, the visionary's job is to really be looking down the road. Where do we need to go? What changes do we need to make? Um, the integrator's job is to put things into action. Are we doing things the right way? Have we built the right teams? Are we servicing the clients the right way? I always like to say that the visionary is the person who chases shiny objects, and the integrator is the person who gets things done. So we learned about this, what, in 2017, 2018 for the
Yeah.
first time, and we realized, hey, that's how we had been operating since about 2009. And finding somebody in your business who can be in the role that you're not as good at. Most CEOs are trying to be both, the visionary and the integrator. And it is almost impossible. It is a very, very rare person who's good at both ends. Now, it doesn't mean integrators don't have visionary skills. They do. It doesn't mean visionaries can't manage anything. They can. But there's a complementary relationship between visionary and integrator. And I think it's at a little higher level than a CEO and a COO. It's really it's so intertwined with figuring out the future and making it happen. And to me, that was the biggest management lesson was realizing that there's a system for excellence at the top of an organization.
Yeah, I think those two roles are equal partners, and they're not always treated that way. And I think that's a big takeaway as well. Like you need both, and you need them both equally. So, but for me, that 2009, you mentioned that time, and that was probably the hardest conversation that I've ever had to have, one of those difficult moments in time. Um, Honestly, we shed a lot of tears. It was really a difficult conversation, but I had to fire my mother-in-law. David's parents were very active in our company, and there just came a time where it wasn't working anymore, and I needed to be able to step into that integrator role before it had that title and take over control of how we were operating the business to ensure that we were operating it profitably, really. We were not up until that point or scraping and getting by, and there was opportunity there. But that had to be a hard conversation with particularly David's mom. Do you want to be a grandparent or would you like to be a business partner? Because it's not working to have you to be both. And that was a launching pad for the business and for, I think, David and me. And that was a hard one. But sometimes the management conversation, having those difficult conversations and going through those kind of things make you so much stronger on the other side. And that was probably my biggest management takeaway.
Yeah, and the epitaph of the story is it did not negatively impact the family relationship. It strengthened it greatly. So the business did better and the family did better after the hard conversation. One more I want to throw on the list. I'm just kind of looking at the list, and another one that sticks out to me because we have so many people on the team that are in this category of what I'm about to share, but it's hiring people you can learn from. So when you're starting a business, you usually can't afford to hire what you really need. Your budget doesn't allow it. You don't have enough clients. But as you grow, you really want to stretch yourself to bring people in who can do things you don't know how to do, who are smarter than you, who have skills in areas that you're just not as good, and to be honest with yourself. Like for all of us, we have things we're very good at, and we have things we're not so good at. We have superpowers and we have super weaknesses. And when you bring in people to complement you and you're willing to be humble enough to let those people take on what they're good at, it is just a game changer. But for me personally, I'm okay. Confession time. I'm a complete control freak. Vicky's gonna laugh because she's like, yeah, like I didn't know that. Uh, but the reality is when you start to do that because your business allows you to do that, it completely changes your ability to grow the company because you have people who can take on those things that you really shouldn't have been doing, and they were probably the things that are causing you or have caused you the most stress because they played to your weaknesses, not your strengths.
Good point.
Anything else on the list for you, Vicky? Otherwise, we can move on.
No, you don't have time to do that. You need to keep moving on.
All right, we're moving along pretty. All right, some life's lessons. Well, I'll put up some of these. Lots of life lessons when you're in this. Vicky, I'll let you go first on this one since I finished the last one.
Oh, all right. Kind of playing off what we were talking about before, I think really pushing into your strengths. So we were talking about competitors and having friendly relationships. Not all of our competitors are all that friendly. And there are some that like to really push on this idea that we do cookie cutter marketing, which every time I hear it, it doesn't make me angry at all. It just makes me chuckle. It's like, okay, cookie cutters make uniformed, really delicious cookies come to life. Or you could put a blob over there, and that's fine too. Maybe that's what you want to buy. Cookie cutters are our strength. This is about a secret sauce that we have, um, that they're trying to turn into an insult. It's always bothered me. We're process driven. We define how we do our work with processes. That's why we can get work done, and by a staffing firm with a good process can get so much done with fewer people. That's how we drive out cost and provide more value. And that repeatable process is how we can make world-class marketing affordable, fast, easy, affordable. That's our mission. So if we custom built everything from scratch, we'd be excellent and no one could afford us. We focus on the small to medium sized businesses, and this is how we provide affordable solutions. That's a life lesson. The life lesson in there is to not really worry about what the competitor's doing and not really worry about what the competitor's saying that is trying to be negative towards you or push you off the top. It doesn't matter what the competitor's doing. Stay true to what we do and do it well.
Yeah, there's actually a bullet on there, the bottom one. A guy named Dave Rendell wrote a book called Freak Factor. And what I loved about it is he said, every strength you have can also be a weakness. However, every weakness you have can also be a strength. And the book just is great analysis. Like, a lot of times in life, we spend so much time worrying about our weaknesses and how do we shore them up. And what David said is maybe you can turn them on their head, and those things that are weaknesses are actually a superpower. Can you lean into the weakness more? So when somebody says cookie cutter marketing, we're like, yeah, that
All
is
for it.
absolutely our superpower. We couldn't serve our clients at cookie cutter. Now, it doesn't mean we're turning out every client gets the exact same thing. That's really our secret sauce is how we do the mass customization.
It's the frosting on the cookie, the frosting and all the decoration.
Yeah. So you want to think about how do I lean into my strengths, but how do I also flip my weaknesses on their head? But for me, the one I want to share here is probably the one I hate the most on this entire presentation, failure. I don't like to get things wrong. I don't like to not succeed. It drives me nuts. It makes me feel terrible about myself. But you learn infinitely more from making mistakes and failing than you do from being successful. Being successful feels great. But if you're never stubbing your toe, tripping, falling down, dusting yourself off, and getting back up, you're not learning. The most painful one in our company history was 1998. And there was a day, gosh, I can still remember the emotion of it. There was a
Mm.
day that we walked in, we had a very small team, there were only 5 people, but we had to fire everyone. And it wasn't their fault. They didn't do anything wrong. But what we discovered is they were unhappy. And I don't mean a little unhappy. They were really unhappy. It was showing up in their work, it was showing up in their attitude towards one another, and it became a really big them versus us culture in the organization. And we had no choice but basically to start over. Now, it was terrifying. We had like, how are we going to do this? How will we service customers? How are we going to get through? And I said it wasn't their fault. But the second part of the life's lessons here is we hired good people. We put them in a role where they couldn't be successful. And it was because we were a young company. We didn't know what we were doing. It was our first year and a half in business. And so we ended up having to really look at the process that we were using to do customer service. And we mapped out every touch point. And for anybody at Haley Marketing who's listening right now, it's a very similar experience to what we did last week. We mapped out all of the touches with the client. And at that time, we looked at what things required the skills of somebody with a marketing degree And this was services that were very different than we provide today. And what things were we doing that were really more administrative kinds of tasks? And there were 21 steps in our process. 18 were administrative, and we were hiring MBAs to do clerical work. It's not a surprise they were unhappy. It was not their fault. It was our fault for not designing the right process and not designing the right job description for the role. We probably could have used a really good staffing partner to help figure that out. But that failure led us to reinventing how we hired, how we managed process, and it led to a dramatic, almost instantaneous turnaround in our service to our clients.
That was a big one. There's
Vicky,
not there. This one's not on here, but I think for me, feedback, that made me think of, providing feedback and having those hard conversations and what that felt like. And my attitude back then was very different than my attitude now about feedback. I used to hate getting feedback. I used to hate um, seeing that weakness in myself or hearing somebody say that to me. And now it's like, thank you so much for pointing that out. I had no idea that was something I didn't see. Very much like that group of people that were hired into this role and they were doing things that they were not good at and they did not want to do. And we didn't give them the feedback at that point. Now I view feedback as a gift. Um, I look at it, if you're withholding it, you're not giving somebody that gift and you're not telling somebody that hard feedback and having those hard conversations, it feels like you're being nice, but you're not being kind in any way. The person's going to fail and they just fail harder later and with less information and they can't learn from it. And often we don't give the feedback and then we hope that person will learn anyway. And how unfair is that? So I really look at feedback as a gift and I appreciate it every time I get feedback, even when it hurts and it stings and you hate to hear it, it's still a gift. And I try very hard to give feedback immediately and as gently as I can, but I offer it as a gift.
yeah, we just got done with our once a year in person for our company, and we were working through parts of the Unreasonable Hospitality Field Guide by Will Guidara. And there's a section on creating a culture of hospitality. And he actually says creating a culture of, he calls it, and I hate the word, he calls it a culture of criticism is one of the 6 or 7 elements of creating a culture of hospitality. But he said criticism is not a negative word. We've turned it into a negative word in our culture. But he said it's not a negative word, it's feedback. It's having the courtesy, having the care to help someone see where they can improve. So if you don't critique people, if you don't give them criticism, they're not going to learn. And I love, Vicky, that you just said, the worst thing we do is we just expect they're going to figure it out, and we get more and more frustrated because they don't. And in the book, the field guide's great for this. It kind of walks through, here's the process you can use to make criticism effective and make it so it doesn't feel like a personal attack on the person because it's not. It's about looking at the behavior and what we need to learn to improve that behavior and getting to the point where people not only accept criticism, as Vicky said, they look forward to it because they want to get better at their jobs because almost every human being wants to get better at what they do. All right, now we get to go on to your favorite section,
We could
customer
talk more Will
service.
Guidara because I'm a groupie.
Well, go ahead. I'll let you get started with another Will example.
So we just came out of the summer event and it was all about making magic happen. And that we talked a lot about hospitality and it was based on Will Guidara has a conference annually and you can only go once. And we went this year and I was so excited to be able to be in the same room with Will. And I have such a great picture of Will and David and me and it's so great. But hospitality, the difference between service and hospitality is the thing here. Service is doing what you said you were going to do and doing it really well. But hospitality is how you make the client feel. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. We all want that human connection, particularly in an AI world. That's what hospitality is all about. And finding those little things where you have actually heard what the client said, you know the client, you have the relationship with the client, you understand their needs and how they work and how they live their lives, and then you do something related to that for them. And it can be small things. Will Guidara has a ton of those stories. I don't know that I want to spend, we only have 15 minutes left, so I don't know how much we want to spend talking about Will Guidara's stories. But just really thinking about the fact that everybody is human. You're dealing with human to human, and people want that interaction. They want that relationship. And whatever they're doing, if you can assume positive intent and then see them as a human with the same needs that you might have, and then you can turn that into hospitality and really excellent service on top. I think I could talk about that for hours, and I don't know how much to
We
talk
have
about.
14 minutes, so I'll interrupt and take over. What I want to talk about in this slide is the importance of empathy. So when things are tough in the economy, we know staffing companies are going to feel it. 2009, 2020, it impacts their business. But of course, it impacts ours as well. People don't pay, people quit. It's financially more difficult. You don't want to ever have to let anybody go because you know it's going to be hard to find a job. You don't want to hurt anyone anywhere, but you're stressed. You're kind of, if your emotional vat is full and then somebody attacks you and you kind of lose it. And I always found that, can I try to put myself in the customer's shoes? Maybe something happened in their world. And I've seen this happen multiple times where somebody will call in, reach out an email, and the level of their being upset outweighs the problem they're upset about. And so usually we try to say, hey, get on the phone. What's going on? Usually something must be really going on. Is it what we did or is it something else? And I would say 9 times out of 10, probably more like 99 out of 100, something happened in their world that we were just you know, the straw that broke the camel's back. We were the last thing that happened, and it all came tumbling out. And once we sort of shine a mirror on what happened, they're usually apologetic, and it usually leads to a much stronger relationship. But one of my favorite stories about empathy was 2000, actually it's about 2011. It started in 2009. And this was from a company that had really taken a financial hit. Now, they weren't a client. We didn't know them. But we made the decision, this is when we started doing Lunch with Haley webinars, and we said, hey, the staffing industry is hurting. So let's double down on giving away free ideas. Instead of just writing a monthly newsletter, let's also do a monthly webinar. And we started coming up with all of the things we could do to teach people how to grow their business in a tough economy. And it was about 2011 that I got an email from an individual in Connecticut. And she said, David, you don't know me. We've never done business with your company, but I've been following you for years. I read your newsletters, I attend your webinars, and we then talk about the ideas and we implement in our business. And the only reason I'm writing to you today is because I'm still in business. Had you not spent time giving away your expertise, we would not be in business. And that may be one of my proudest accomplishments in 30 years is somebody that we helped. They never spent a dime with us. It wasn't our biggest sale. It wasn't our most profitable year. It's somebody we helped and made a difference to in their lives. And eventually they became a great client when they could afford it. But my excitement wasn't the great client. My excitement was the empathy for we took somebody from a hard place to a good place just by caring, just by being there, just by helping. So that's one of my biggest lessons on customer service is just continue to give.
Yeah, I love that. I also want to use the opportunity right now to shout out to our success team. We have this amazing client success team that's behind the scenes most of the time. They're answering tickets that come in, lots and lots of tickets, lots and lots of questions, and they do it so well and they do it with so much care and concern for our clients. And their whole job is to make our clients successful. And that's the approach they take every time. And a bunch of these things on this slide are just the way that they act day to day. Some of it's training, but most of it's just who they are. So if you haven't met our success team and you haven't shouted out to them recently, please make sure you do. They're our unsung heroes right behind the scene.
All right. This is a hard one. In our book, we listed a lot of different people who have influenced us, and I think that was only a partial list. This is even a more partial list. So I'm going to give a thank you already to Jim Cecil, who helped teach us nurture marketing back in the early 90s. But then I also want to thank Seth Godin. Um, Kind of a weird connection. He and I went to the same high school. He was about 3 or 4 years ahead of me, but he is one of the world's most famous marketers. Wrote Permission Marketing, wrote Purple Cow. I don't remember if Build Your Tribe was the name of a book or not, but just love that Seth teaches that you don't have to win over the world. You don't have to make everyone happy. Your ideal market is just big enough to support your goals, just big enough that you can create raving fans, build relationships, and live the life you want, the future you want for your organization, your team, and stop trying to worry about being everything to everybody. So I love that from Seth. And you get Will again,
I'll get
Vicki,
Will
because
again
you put him in
because
here 3 times.
I'm going to put him everywhere because I just think what he does and what he has done in the restaurant industry is just amazing. And I love to learn and bring knowledge from other industries into the staffing and marketing industries and use them. And I'll never work in a restaurant again. That was really not a great time the first time I did it. Nobody wants me to do that. But our business is really about caring for people and taking pride in the work that we produce. And the profits that we make follow this service, not the other way around. And that is definitely a Will Guidara kind of value. We exist to serve our clients and help them succeed. It's that simple.
Which brings us to our number one lesson. So find a true equal partner in your business because we could never be where we are today. We would not be celebrating our 30th birthday without one another. And in your organization, who can you have as that partner that helps you be more successful, that pushes you? You don't have to be an owner. You can have somebody in the organization who is your partner in helping you bring out your best, and you can help them bring out their best. Somebody who's the yin and yang of the organization.
So I was talking to my AI earlier about this particular
Yeah, I've
slide.
been replaced. It's sad.
I do spend a lot of time with Claude. David's very jealous. But anyway, Claude said I shouldn't use the word synergy because people don't like the word synergy, but it's the right word. When two people can work side by side or a team can work together and you've got the right mix and you've got equal partners working together, it creates true synergy. 1 + 1 = 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And I really don't care if my AI doesn't like that. I think it's super true. And I think that David and I do a great job of, we're equal, but we don't step on each other's toes. We split the work. It's not always split exactly down the middle. Sometimes it ebbs and flows, and one of us is doing more than the other. But we have very different lanes that we work in. And we have a language that over 30 years we've developed where we have a way of saying, this is super important to me. And if I say, I feel strongly about this, David will back down, and I know he will. And if he says that to me, I will back down, and I know he will. Or I know he knows I will. So because of that, I think that 30 years, we've just developed this relationship where we can trust each other. And I hope that everybody that's watching right now and listening in can find that kind of relationship where you've got the yin and yang and create the synergy and have this mutual respect for each other. In a world of AI, and we talk about it all the time, it's hard to do this. And we're trusting our AIs to do things, but ultimately it's the human relationships that matter.
And Linda just chimed in, if my bingo card is still active, if Synergy gets me a pair of socks.
I'm all out of socks. Not really, Linda. You can stop at the office and I'll get you a pair of socks.
Speaking of which,
Bingo.
that's a great transition to wrap this up. So thank you for joining us today. So I know some of you have heard about Rogue IQ. You've heard us mention it. Some of you have seen it. More and more of our clients are now using it, but this is our AI marketing assistant and our Rogue guided service where we're helping people to implement world-class content marketing, blogging, SEO, social media, soon to be a couple of other really cool new types of content marketing. Same stuff we've been doing for 30 years, but now using the Rogue IQ as the engine and providing the support. It's amazing. If you have not seen it yet, ask. Ask who you're working with at Haley Marketing to see it. And if you're not working with someone at Haley Marketing, reach out and ask to see it. You will love what you see. And we do have anybody can try it for free for a couple of weeks. There's a QR code there, or you can go to rogueiq.ai/rebel. Now, it's a little time for questions. So if you have some, you can pop them up in the chat. I'll open that up. But I also want to make sure we don't neglect a big event because next month is our Smart Ideas Summit, our 6th year. So it's a virtual conference. I think it's maybe one of the last virtual conferences in the staffing industry. Everybody started these during COVID. We kept doing it because it's expensive to go to conferences in person. It's hard to get your team there. Most people who work in the staffing industry don't get the opportunity to go to industry events. So we have one for you. We do an all-day event. This year it's going to be on Tuesday, September the 29th. 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. We have 14 presentations, an amazing lineup of speakers to help you build your growth engine. We're kind of stealing from the theme of our book, but we're going to have speakers in all different areas from uh, American Staffing Association, NOAA talking about what's going on in the economy, to talking about AI, to talking about just about every critical aspect of your marketing and sales and recruiting. So please join us. You can go to smartideas.haleymarketing.com to grab a seat for everybody on your team. Last year we had 1,000 people join us. This year we'd love to blow that out of the water and have even more of you joining us for this event. And then last but not least for today, we do have one more product demo coming up in August, and that's next week, where we're going to be looking at some of our SaaS products. So if you haven't yet seen Rogue IQ, we're going to be doing a very quick overview of Rogue IQ, as well as some of our cool AI and automation tools that we've been building out recently to show you ways to make your marketing faster, easier, more affordable, particularly some things around improving response to your website. And with that, let's see. I don't know if we have any questions that have
No
come in the chat.
question.
No questions. All right. Well, look at that. We got 2 minutes to spare. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. Really appreciate it. If you need all the details again, go to lunchwithhaley.com. You can download the slides and be appreciative that we didn't have to read all the bullets.
Thank you all.
Have a great day, everyone.